Hello and welcome. I'm painting this cute parrot today. I couldn't resist him when I found him because he has this really cheeky pose. He reminds me of Joey from Friends. So that was what really made me want to paint him. That and the lovely bright colours that he has. Because the pose is what drew me to painting this little guy, I have to be a little bit careful with the drawing because it's important to get the gesture right. And by gesture I mean the movement of his body. Even though he's stationary, there's a kind of energy to that stance that he's got, which I want to try and capture. And it's also, when you're worried about the drawing, there's little things you can do to help yourself, like mark out where you want the head and the feet to end up, just so that you can position the whole thing in the center of your page. Because this has happened to me before, where you start off your drawing and you're doing rather well, and then you realize you haven't left yourself enough room at the bottom of the page and his feet end up hanging off the bottom, or you draw his proportions incorrectly because you're trying to squish him into the bottom of the page. The other thing that I like to do is work on a piece of paper that is slightly bigger than I actually need. And I can hear you saying, well, Kerry, that sounds very wasteful. And perhaps it is, but I put it to you that if you start your painting on a piece of paper that is exactly the right size and you mess it up, as I was describing earlier, that's an even bigger waste of paper. So there is a little bit of method to my madness. And because if the piece of paper is slightly bigger than you needed, if you end up getting them a bit squiff, you can always trim down the piece of paper at the end to get your final size right. It just gives you a little bit more room for error. Now, I couldn't wait to put these bright, happy colours into the little bird, but I'm also putting colours that you can't necessarily see in the bird. Well, I can see them, or perhaps I'd like to see them. I've got a colour called Brilliant Red Violet, which is one of my favourites, and I've been using that to put in some of the darker values and some of the shadow areas. I chose it because I know that in my palette it plays so very nicely with the orange that I have. It's one of my favourite colour combinations, and the longer you paint with the same palette, the more you develop a feeling for which paint colours are going to go together the best and which ones just make you happy to paint with. And that's also why I put in these extra colours, because I'm not trying to make a perfect photorealistic copy of this bird. I am kind of celebrating him and all his glory and all the things that I love about him. Whatever subject I'm painting, these are the sort of things I always like to think about. When I'm creating the painting, I want to make more of the things that were delighting me enough about this particular subject to make me want to paint it in the first place. So for this little guy, I loved his pose. That's what attracted me to him in the first place, and I also loved his colours. And to me, adding these combination colours, my orange with that violet colour, is a way of making more of his beautiful bright colours, because I know that this particular combination actually, when they're together, make each of the colours look better. You know, it's your perfect partnership, isn't it? That when these two are together, they're better than they were on their own. Isn't that a lovely thought, just in general? There's so much to be gained from painting, isn't there? Now, the eye is always quite an important part, I think, because as soon as you put the eye in, the bird really comes to life. And one of the things that does that quite well is making sure that you've left a little bit of a nice bright white highlight. And the other thing is, I'm not trying to be too detailed and careful as a general rule, but when it comes to the eye, it's the one place where I don't want colour whooshing about, so I do make sure that it's nice and dry before I start that kind of more delicate part of the painting. Now I want the main focus to obviously be the bird, so I have no intention of putting in a full background for him, but he's standing on this log and I really rather enjoy painting wood for some reason, so I really appreciated being able to put in those markings for the edges of the wood and where the pole is cracked here and there. But I do like a subject on a plain white background, but it was a bit much for me, just too plain, so I've added the sort of splashes that I can't quite live without. And now I'm kind of asking myself whether that's enough. I've incorporated the colours I used, my beloved orange and violet combination, in the splashes in the background. So that is kind of integrating my subject and the background, and that makes me a bit happier. But apparently I couldn't just leave it there. I did go on and add a little bit more to the background. Of course I forgot to press the record button in the beginning, but you can see what I'm doing. The reason I did this is the top right hand side of his little head is where the light is catching him, and it's the lightest part of the bird, that pale yellow. And I never like to leave a light edge just against the white background because it doesn't really bring it out much. So that's always where I have a bit of a temptation to put in some sort of background, not for the point of painting the background, but for the point of emphasizing the subject. So I chose the violet colour and just put in a little dark violet edge against the lighter parts and then soften it off so that it kind of washes out nice and pale, organic random marks, then repeated those around the rest of the painting. I think less is more is the best approach here, but I have to say it's quite fun, and I probably got a little bit carried away and did more than perhaps I should have. He was an awful lot of fun to paint, and I hope you enjoyed watching him appear in his bright, colourful glory. Thank you for watching. See you next time.